Hello and welcome back to another episode of United We Stand, Divided We Podcast. And I must say hello first from the UK because I am closing out my European trip. And of course, I have my co host Lionel from Toronto, Canada.
And I am unfortunately not in London,
Yes,
not even
yes.
Ontario, yet alone England. So,
Yes. Well, so I apologize for the poor video quality, and I'm not really sure what the audio sounds like. Hopefully, it's okay. I'm having to use my little Rode mic here. Lighting's not
oh,
too
it
great in the
sounds fine.
hotel
Road
room.
road mics are good, so you're
Yeah.
you're good.
So okay, excellent. So this is what we got. But so yeah,
Road.
I have spent since last Saturday roaming the European countryside with my son, and it's been absolutely amazing. If anybody out there is in Europe or traveling to Europe, and you're going to be in Belgium, make sure you make a trip to Ghent and Bruges, two little towns outside of Brussels that are just amazing. They're not near as commercialized and touristy as Brussels and some of the other cities, and they are. It's literally some of the most beautiful towns and countryside I have ever seen. It's amazing. So
That would be a lot of fun, and I'm not gonna lie to you. If I ever get the chance to go gallivanting through parts of Europe, that's exactly what I would want to do. Is I would be less interested in seeing Berlin and London as I would be in seeing
yeah,
small little towns, in various countries where people just live their
yeah. I mean, there
local
was
lifestyle.
tourists in Ghent, but it was far less, and it's very hometown like. It's very
Yeah,
much an outside city. And I was actually surprised. So we went to Cologne and we got to see the cathedral with his magnificence, that structure. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it survived the war. It's amazing.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
It's pretty massive. It's too bad you didn't have more time to spend in some places, like if you were on a month-long vacation or something like that. Um, there are so many different things. Like first of all, being in England, and you mentioned small towns. From what I understand, there are a lot of absolutely gorgeous little towns all over England, um, which are obviously a different world compared to being in London or any of the major cities, I imagine. And it'd be the same in Belgium, same in England, same in or Germany, same in France, wherever. But yeah, Germany's known for cathedrals and castles. I've never seen
yeah.
anything other than in pictures on the internet
It's
or
just
books.
amazing to me, though, what has actually survived, World War II with all the
Yeah,
bombings, and it's just it just takes you to a whole different place, and it's hard to conceptualize the amount of suffering and just despair the whole region was in back in that
yeah,
time. We went to Bastogne as well, and of course that's where the Battle of the Bulge was, just outside Bastogne in Luxembourg, and of course big battle in Bastogne, and they have a World War II memorial that is magnificent. I mean, it's huge and it's a lot of information. And ironically, there were times when I looked at my son, I was like, are we in a U.S. war memorial? Because there's so much U.S. memorabilia everywhere. It's
yeah,
like, there's even some stores to this day in Bastogne that fly the American flag in their store.
yeah. Well, you know what? If you remember, we had this conversation too, like when you were first driving through there, and you sent me that picture. So, oh, hey, we're going through here right now, and we're on our way. Blah blah blah. And I remember saying, well, saying to you that, well, there's, and I was making a joke because about Canadians being very popular in Belgium and the Netherlands and stuff, right? And they are because they were places that were freed by Canadian troops where they liberated them literally. But that's true for British troops, American troops, and depending on where you go, you can go to one region and another, and in one region there it's just a ton of places where you can see where they're like, yeah, we're for generations they appreciate that Americans came in there and liberated them, that British, the Canadians do. So it's not surprising that where
Yeah.
you went, you saw a memorial with all of this American stuff,
Yeah.
and names of soldiers, I imagine, who gave their life. And that's the other thing is they forever want to not commemorate. That's kind of the wrong word, but remember the
Yeah.
people who gave their lives for their freedom.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal. I mean, we don't realize that in North America as much
No,
because
we
we
don't.
fought for our own freedoms, but we don't know in the last 4 generations what it's like to have someone else come over and liberate us from freedom, because
Yeah.
America liberated themselves, Canadians liberated themselves, French liberated themselves, French Canadians, I mean, um, and not through war necessarily. In some cases, yes, but in some cases, no.
Yeah.
So it is different, and I honestly I am envious because I'd love to be able to see the things that you've seen. So
Yeah, and actually, I guess it really depends too on where you go as to what allied force is recognized, because the Canadians landed somewhere, the British landed somewhere, the US landed somewhere,
yeah,
and obviously Russia, ironically, was an ally at that time against Germany. The Russians
it kind of in
landed
a
somewhere,
roundabout way. It
so
was it was it was basically the Russians originally had a deal with Nazi Germany, um, and the Nazis reneged on that deal. So the Russians just said, we're going to go in and do this, and we don't want anybody getting in our way. So in a sense, they the only reason why we can call them allies at that time was because they basically said they pissed us off, don't get in our way. We're going to liberate ourselves and show them what for, and they did
yeah,
by
yeah,
sheer numbers. They didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the
right,
training, but they had stupid amounts of numbers. And by this point, the British had already kind of British. I'm sorry, the Nazis had shot themselves in the foot. So they they
yeah,
they, they were they were spread too thin. They were fighting in Africa. They were fighting in Eastern Europe. They were fighting in Western Europe. They and everybody said, "Oh, they were fighting on 2 fronts." No, they weren't. They were fighting on like 5 fronts.
yeah,
they,
yeah.
they had zero chance, and that's not even including out in the water, where
Well, you
originally their
gotta you gotta
U-boats were
really
doing
remember
damage, and
too
now
that
they're
Italy was allied to Germany, so Italy and Germany were
yeah,
both fighting on these fronts. And of course, then Japan, attacked U.S.
right.
and we all know what happened with that. That's what brought U.S. into the war. And yeah, once I think U.S. came in and galvanized all of the allied forces, because the British were like on the verge of collapse.
Not exactly.
Um,
That's kind of a misnomer.
well,
Like,
I shouldn't
no,
say
no offense.
collapse, but
It's
they were
actually
spread thin.
they were
It's
spread thin, but here's the thing about
Yes,
it. Between Canada, Britain, and other allies that didn't include the US at this point, they were actually going to win the war, but it probably would have taken 3 more years just to get to the point where they would have been able to reinforce their own forces. Here's the thing you have to understand: when it came to how everything went, sea power, air power, manpower, 95% of that battle, of winning battles, were not American, except for D-Day, because by that point, Americans had joined. In D-Day, it was a lot of British sea equipment, the those landing craft. A lot of them were provided by Americans. Even when it was just British and Canadian troops going off, they came off of American ships in many cases because they had a lot of them, and they just started the war. They hadn't lost anything yet, right? So that was a huge, obviously, help. And the numbers that they put into the war, massive help. And once they actually had their air power in there, obviously that was a huge, massive help. But for the most part, air superiority belonged to Britain, and I want to say and Canada because a lot of the airplanes were built in Canada, and a lot of the airmen were Canadian, and they shot a lot of planes down in the war. So yeah, they wouldn't have lost that war anyways. Germany had nothing to go on. They spread themselves out too thin. Without the Americans, the war would have taken another 3 years before Canada and Britain would have, along with France by that point, would have basically uh, weakened them so much they would have been able to strengthen their own forces and win the war. When America came in, they basically shortened the war by about a year and a half in total, and pretty much made the turnaround happen within 6 months rather than 2 years. So that war definitely lasted less time with America's help. It was much easier. But I bring that up because you have no idea how many Canadians get really insulted when they hear Americans say, "Yeah, we came in and won the war. It wouldn't have won it without us." And it's just they don't teach some of the things that actually went on, even in Canadian schools. To be honest with you, it's embarrassing, but that's actually
Well,
the
I
truth.
never assumed it was all
Yeah.
American. I
Well, no,
just
I know
feel
that
that's why I
it's
said
yeah,
that when they came into the war, it kind of
right.
galvanized everyone together. But by what I've seen here and some of the historical documentation and all,
Yeah.
the British were not winning that war, and they were not
I
going to be
didn't say
winning
the
that
British were
war.
winning the war. The British, the first of all, if it wasn't for Canada, the British would have lost. But that was only because of those damn missiles. Germany did
Right.
have air superiority at the time, but let's not forget that up until that moment, Britain still had sea superiority over every other country in the world, not knowing nobody knew this but America at this time, that America really was about to have sea superiority that they never gave up to this day. But up to that point, Britain was still the de facto leader in superiority at sea. The problem is, of course, Germany knew that. They made a lot of U-boats, they sunk a lot of stuff, but it was mostly merchant ships they were sinking, by the way. But unfortunately, that meant that Britain, they did France, they cut off France, then they cut off the sea. So it was harder for them to get stuff from Canada, but that's why Canada was involved so quickly. So Canadians made up a smaller number because we don't have a lot of numbers, right? But what we make up for is the fierceness of our fighting, the fact that we had well trained people that could train other people. We were able to knock out a lot of those U boats over the years before America got into it. But once America got in there, of course, their superior sea ships knocked a lot of U boats right out of the war. That was pretty much it. It allowed Britain to get their ships back out because Britain didn't want to put a lot of their ships out in the Atlantic because they felt they needed to keep them as a blockade so they wouldn't be invaded by water. And it's kind of understandable, right? So
Well,
that's
there's a
another thing
there,
where the Americans were obviously of great help when they did join the war. So Britain was they were in trouble, but the thing is, remember that they also changed leaders during the war, and the second leader is basically the one that made changes to the war effort, how they operated there, and they started to win battles again. This was prior to the U.S. getting in, and I know that it was when Pearl Harbor happened. America basically said, "Okay, fine, we're not going to sit back anymore. We got to get involved." But I'm pretty sure that England asking them to get involved had something to do with it, and they were already in talks about it before Pearl Harbor.
well, there's a movie that recently just came out
Yeah,
this year called Ungentlemanly Warfare. And it's a true story that I
yeah,
didn't even know about until I
right.
saw this movie. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of it's Hollywoodized, but
Oh, they always
the
are to some extent. Yeah,
the core story, I'm sure, is what inspired it all, and it's really remarkable, like what the British did to really turn the tide and give themselves the ability to actually make advances against the U-boats. It was really spectacular. I was like really impressed. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The whole U-boat thing is really quite fascinating. As a lot of people didn't realize how many U-boats there actually were, how many Allied ships they sunk, which was a
Yeah.
lot more than I thought as a kid. But how many of them were actually sunk and stranded themselves? And
Yeah.
I say stranded because they weren't all sunk. Some of them were stranded because they were hunted so diligently. Again, once the Americans got in there, like here's a good example. They would do beach invasions, right? Bombard from out at sea with their massive cannons off to ships and stuff like that. But as they did this, there were other ships that had to actually keep the shipping lanes open because they had to be resupplied just as much as everybody else. I mean, there were no nuclear ships back then. So they need to be resupplied just like every other, ship and air regiment in every country and everything else. So obviously they had a lot of hand in that. But in the process, if you remember how the Americans patrolled the Pacific during the war against the Japanese, they did it in the most efficient manner. Like the Japanese would send like an entire fleet of carriers and this and that, and they just kind of jumbled them all out there. It's not like they didn't have a plan, but they were basically just thinking blitz like the Germans and do it in numbers. Americans did it way smarter, and that they would have your carrier, and then you'd have your support ships, you'd have a battleship, you'd have a I can't remember the name of that other one, the other fighting one.
Destroyer.
Not a battleship. Destroyer, thank you. And of course the destroyers would be out there. The battleships would be ready to bombard from a distance. And you have other ships, I can't remember the name of frigates or something like that, that basically protect the carrier, which is capable of protecting itself pretty well, by the way. Not even by the airplanes, but with guns and everything. And they did this um, kind of like a gang walking down the street, except floating through the ocean, where you've got scouts, just like how I guess kind of like how Romans would do it, right? You got your scouts, and then you got your guys up there that are ready to take the first battle on, and draw people out, and then you got the next ones that are going to shoot the long arrows far, and then you got
Yeah.
your air support with the carriers, and so they kind of went about the same idea in the Atlantic, except without the carriers, in that you would have ships that would actually be listening for the subs, and in the movies they would start dropping depth charges right away, but in real life they would do that and they would radio to the next ship, who would then sonar again to pinpoint, and then another one would start dropping the depth charges. Then the sub would attempt to move, but another ship would come by and drop depth charges. They were incredibly successful in the way they did things.
Yeah.
They took out a lot of them. So
Yes,
it was a lot
indeed.
better.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I'm gonna move off. I could talk
yeah,
a long time on this because it's really amazing history. I love it,
it is. It
especially
is
being here and seeing things I've read about in history
right.
books and understanding. It's been amazing, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I did not bring a U.S. to UK or U.S. to European power adapter. So I have been running off
Oh.
USB power. So I'm a little short on my laptop power. So a couple things, I just kind of want
You
to.
forgot, huh? Did you?
Well, I just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But
The
we
old
bought
free progress.
this here, but this little USB charger just doesn't cut it on the laptop. That's fine on the devices, but the laptop
Yeah,
just needs
yeah,
more
yeah.
juice.
How much you got left in your laptop right now?
It's like 25,
Oh, that's
26%.
not
So
much. All right. Well,
it'll
let's
be a
get
little
on
bit.
with some stuff. Have you been keeping up with any news? You've just been probably a lot of busy because you're traveling around and seeing beautiful things.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with it a little bit. I
Yeah.
haven't really been able to spend a lot of time because, unfortunately, again, I haven't really been able to use my laptop much because I've kind of just had to leave it alone and let it trickle charge at night and get up with 40%. So
Right.
haven't
Okay.
had a chance to do a whole lot. So yeah,
I'll get on with the okay. Where are we? Pixel Watch 2, not 3, is now on Wear OS 5. Uh, I don't even know how to tell you this, but it's like this watch, not the 3, is now up to par with almost every other watch. It's missing maybe two things from the Pixel Watch 3, which is maybe a half a notch below the Galaxy Watch 7, which is the premier, probably best smartwatch in the market. I'm not talking about the one that lasts the longest, but I mean the one that could give you the most, and technically at a cheaper price than some. Um, but this basically means that last year's already makes me feel like I don't really need the 3. Where I would want
Yeah.
the 3 is for the bigger screen, and I'm just talking about the same size watch with a bigger screen. But there's also the option of the actual bigger 45 millimeter one. So that's an interesting thing. So anybody who's thinking about getting the 3 and not sure if this 2 is good enough, if the watch size doesn't bother you, if you're good enough with it, Wear OS 5 makes a huge difference. There was some news about they
Yeah.
had pulled the Wear OS 5 from the Pixel Watch 2 because there were people that didn't get. They had to do a soft reboot, not a soft reboot. It was what's the word I'm looking? It was soft. What's wrong with me? Bricked, soft bricked, as in
Oh.
it could be reinstalled and blah blah blah, right? It's an apparently very easy process, and it would be because if as long as you've got your stuff backed up with Google One, of course. Um, However, those numbers are apparently very tiny amount, and that most people already got the Wear OS 5 on the watch. If not, wait a few more days, they'll fix it and they'll do it again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah. So that's one thing. As for Android 15, uh, rumored dates are now, and this is more of a confirmation slash rumor, and it's kind of hard to explain. October 15th, which I believe they wanted to do 14th, but that's Columbus Day or some other kind of holiday in the States. So help me out here. Not
Okay.
Columbus, one of those days.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't get Columbus Day off. I don't celebrate Columbus Day. I know it's a bank holiday and all that business, but I don't.
Yeah, well, okay. I don't know why they would do that either. It's kind of like, for instance, I just got a notification that some government money benefit thing that I've got coming to me next week. It might be delayed 24 hours because of Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is a day that Canada has, for the last few years now, finally decided to acknowledge the asinine things that we did to the native population in this country long after we got here and became a country. It's about time we did. So get some education and do that. So and by the way, when you watch hockey games that are from Canada, like like the Preds in Winnipeg, Preds in Toronto, whatever, you'll notice that all of them do that thing at the beginning of the game where they say we would like to recognize the so on and so on, and you see the Native American type symbols on the ice. This is
Yeah.
what that's about. Is it's an ongoing thing, and the sports teams long ago have decided that they're going to do it continuously, not once a year. So, anywho, I went and rambled and a little bit further than I intended to. Um,
Shocker.
oh yeah, okay. You're lucky you're in England, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
if I wasn't, you gonna come down to the U.S. and teach me a lesson? Is that what you're trying
Yeah, come down there. I'll
to?
give you
Yeah.
what for. Bang,
Yeah. Yeah.
zoom. No, seriously.
So one thing I wanted to mention is, as you
Yeah,
see, I'm using my Galaxy Bud 3, earphones right now.
yeah, that's right.
Um,
Those are new,
so
right?
I did try the live translation. Does not work
Not
good
ready
at
for
all.
prime time. Not ready for prime time.
No, no.
All
Especially
right.
the problem is that when you're in a loud train station or on a bus or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, it can't really hear you well. And
Mm.
like even my son and I were playing with it because he speaks very fluent Spanish. So
Oh, okay.
I said, "Hey, let's test it out." And he would have to like pronunciate the Spanish word so good, and it's like that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen in the real world, right?
You know what?
Nobody you're talking to is going to pronunciate every single vowel, syllable, or whatever they
Yeah, and
call
if
it in
you ask him to,
Spanish.
they're going to
Yeah,
say, "You have a nice day," and take off.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
Here's the thing that I think should be interesting. Then I think it would be cool to see Google and Samsung work together on that one, since Google has a full suite of translation, but they don't yet do an actual live translation. Because not only could they do that, but they could put it into all of the phones,
yeah,
add it in. But Google's speech recognition is vastly superior to everyone else on the planet at this point. That's a fact. You can't go anywhere and anyone will tell you, oh, yes, their speech recognition is way better than Google's, especially when you're typing. Uh,
yeah,
Ask anybody. They'll tell you it
yeah.
makes very little to no mistakes, right?
It's definitely
Although
got a
I will
ways to
tell you,
go.
in the Android 15 beta, that's not true. Tons of mistakes. I'm pissed off. I can't wait to get the final because it's killing me.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so if anybody buys these because they think they can really use the live translation, I maybe you'll have better luck, but I did not have that great of
There
luck.
is an alternative to it,
So
though. You could still use, you could, if it doesn't work, you can still turn on Google Translate and go into the live mode, which is a
yeah,
little different. It requires the other person to actually hear from your device or read from your screen. Um,
yeah. We didn't
but
use that, but I know that exists. But
yeah.
I did use Google Translate because we went into the Overloon War Memorial, which is in
Ooh,
Overloon, Netherlands, and it's again the
Leatherloon.
largest.
I can't even figure out.
It's the largest collection of World War II, you know, tanks, bullets, guns.
Oh,
I
that's the
mean,
one you were
it's
telling me about. Is that the one you were telling me about the
oh
other
my
day?
gosh, it is so amazing. I don't
That would be
remember, but
that would
it's
be pretty cool to see. Yeah.
yeah. And nothing in there is in English. Everything is in French or French. And so we
Oh,
had
that's
to
right. Oh, yeah.
use yeah, we had to use we used Google Translate so when we go to the exhibits, we would be able to see like what the exhibit was about. So that was interesting. But there's zero English.
Some Dutch words are related to or similar to German, and others are vastly different entirely.
Yeah.
Like just the name of the place to me, uh, I wouldn't even know how to spell it from what you said. So, um,
Well, it's ov. It's pretty basic. I mean, it's Overloon. Overloon as in Nancy Overloon.
oh, it's pretty much like it sounds.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And
Yeah, you can look it up and
um,
you can see that it apparently there was a very decisive battle fought there, and there was, of course, the city was
okay, wait a minute.
overrun,
What did
but
you say? What are you talking? What did you say? Netherlands?
it's in the Netherlands. It's close to Poland.
Uh,
Poland, Germany is kind of down in that corner of the Netherlands. So
what's the significance of Overloon, Netherlands? Huh, it's not working.
well,
That's crazy. It's like literally blank. It's like it heard me and just shut itself off. I
well,
wanted to see
I
what it was going to
mine's
say.
been doing that. Mine's been doing that all the last 2 days.
They
I've been
didn't.
trying to use it, and it's been acting really weird.
Yeah, they've done a couple of updates recently that have made it better, but they're doing so many updates so quickly that you're gonna find some snippets of oops,
Yeah, yeah,
snippets of oops. But in all honesty, the reason I don't complain about it is there's so much to it, and they it's updating at such a fast pace that I can honestly foresee in a couple of years most of the crap that they've got going on that you might complain about it today isn't going to be a big deal
yeah,
a year and a half from now, even yet alone 5 years from now.
yeah.
But that's another story
Well,
altogether. We don't have time to talk about that stuff
yeah, I
right
think we're gonna have to kind of wrap this up because I got about 15% left. Sorry, guys. It's going to be a short 30-minute instead of our normal hour. But
Yeah, yeah.
we
That's
just want to
that's
get
what
on
it is.
here and let you know what was going on and give you some exciting news and kind of fill you in on my trip. And I'll be posting a bunch of
Yeah.
pictures. Of course, a lot of you don't have my personal stuff, but I'll try to maybe create something we can put on the channel maybe next week or the week after.
Right.
My son and I were calculating it. I have taken about 1,400 pictures,
That's
not
it.
including my GoPro footage.
That's
So
it.
that's a lot.
Listen, I go to the air show and I take between 1,600 and 2,800 every year at just the air show. And that's
Wow.
not including on the way to the air show or on the way back home. Just saying.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of pictures and video to go through, so I'll try to get something together
Yeah,
in
no,
the next couple
that's
weeks.
that's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Um,
He calculated it out based on the amount of hours we've been awake and when we started the trip that I took a picture every 2.5 minutes. I
okay.
was
Well,
like,
you
okay.
can get the exact number. I mean, by just looking at your devices that you took the picture on.
Oh no, I did. That's what I'm saying, but that
Yeah.
doesn't tell you the time frame. It just tells you the total number.
Time,
So he
what do you mean
calculated
to
out
tell you
based
time
on
frame? All your photos should be time stamped.
well, yeah, but it doesn't show you like it shows you a total number account of total pictures. It doesn't show you a total time frame in that. Sure, you can go in each picture and like calculate if you wanted to like do all this mathematical addition,
But
but
I can go in here right now and tell you exactly how many pictures I took between Friday and today, or between
yeah,
last Friday and next
yeah,
Friday,
I
or
can
next.
tell you that too.
You
But
know,
you
that's
can't.
what
It
I mean.
doesn't
You know
tell
what I
you how
mean.
many minutes. It doesn't tell you how many minutes you've done it.
How
Not
many
in total,
minutes I've taken pictures?
right?
Why? Why? Okay, this is a
See,
debate for another time because
that's
you're
what I
gonna
was
run out of
saying.
battery. You're gonna run out of
He
battery before we get into this.
calculated how many
But
minutes I've been awake versus how many pictures I took and how many pictures per minute I took during my waking hours. And it was every
uh,
2.5 minutes I was taking a picture. So,
so you
anyways,
weren't awake
yeah.
very long then.
Oh no, we were awake a lot.
I'm looking. I'm bugging you because, but keep in mind, for those of you watching, Robert likes to take pictures with his various devices in exciting situations. Go to a game, go to an event, on a nice walk in a beautiful place, out on vacation in beautiful places. I, however, fancy myself a photographer, not professional, but a photographer nonetheless. So I might go out on a walk and take 350 pictures in the 15 minutes I'm gone. So I'm just making fun of him. I'm poking fun. But I also throw out 349 of those pictures though because
Oh,
they're
I'm sure
garbage.
I'll weed out a bunch of mine too. So, yeah.
Oh, more of yours will be better because you take your time and take the picture. I start snapping and snapping and snapping. I end up keeping about 1%. So
Yeah.
that's the big difference. So,
Yep.
anyways, that
So,
said, we're gonna have to mosey on before he goes down to 1% and it just kills itself right in the middle of this.
that's right.
And we need it to
So,
save. So
yes, yes. So, on that note, I am Robert from currently the UK, tomorrow the US, and we have Lionel from.
Lionel and I'm in Fiji in my head.
Yes.
We'll see you next time, and hope maybe we can get one in earlier, or do another short video some point. I doubt it, but
Yeah,
you never know.
we'll
But
do
we'll see
something.
you again,
So,
and hopefully you guys check out Robert's channels and everything, and he'll be posting
hit that
a
like,
review of those
subscribe,
things.
follow, do all the fun things, and we'll see you
Click,
next
click,
week.
and click.
Click, click, click. See you later. Or I should say cheers because I'm in England. Cheers. Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Cheerio. Bye.
Arrivederci.